Welcome back, honors. All right, so we had a great day in class today. I slightly overestimated a little bit our ability to move things through certain things a little bit more expeditiously. Mainly because, ironically, I know I say I underrate. I think a lot of other people underrate the Minoans, but I think I underrated the Minoans a little bit simply because I thought we were going to be able to get through them like super fast. But I had to talk about plumbing and how awesome that is. All right, so and I had to talk about like the labyrinth and frescoes and non-sexist religious structures in the Minoan kingdoms and Crete and all this other stuff. But now we're getting into the Mycenaean period, right? 1600 to about 1100 BC, all right? So we're now moving into a phase where some of y'all are immediately like, wait. So you're saying the Minoans and the Mycenaeans overlapped a little bit. I am saying that the Minoans and the Mycenaeans overlapped a little bit, all right? These people actually probably existed around the same time period, give or take, right? Not exactly at the same time. We know the Mycenaeans definitely came later and definitely came to power and dominance later. However, the big key thing is, where did they come from? How did they end up here? What is going on? Are they a civilization? Did they work with the Minoans? We don't really know necessarily, but we do have a lot of good inclinations and a lot of leftover artifacts that we can use to actually study these things. Because one of my ultimate dream jobs is to be an archaeologist and go dig for stuff over in Greece and things like that. But we won't get into that right now. So the Mycenaeans, though, came from the grasslands of southern Russia, right? That is not nearly as important as the place of where they settled, all right? So the Mycenaeans originally were probably a nomadic people, right? A group of people that knew how to farm, herd, do certain things, right? So wield maybe some different types of weapons, some small improvised tools, right? But they showed up trying to seek better climate, trying to seek better farmland, even though ironically enough, you ain't gonna find great farmland in Greece, but they did find resources in Greece, right? Access to the sea, access to another large-based civilization like the Minoans to learn from, to culturally diffuse with. That's right, Kelly, I said it, cultural diffusion, all right? Yeah, best word ever. Now, anyway, so the Mycenaeans came from the grasslands of southern Russia, but where they settled is key, right here. Peloponnese, all right? So the large southern chunk of Greece, right? So they traded and learned from the Minoans a lot, actually. So, right, no, go back. All right, so here we go. Nope, stop it. No, bad Prezi. There we go. Peloponnese is right here, also known as Peloponnesus, all right? So Peloponnesus or Peloponnese is this big chunk of Greece right here. The part that I always think looks like a hand. All right, so you've got Crete down here, a very short boat right away, and then you got Peloponnese right there. So, and the Mycenaeans settled right there. All right, so that is where the Mycenaea was. And as you can see, there's a lot of big ones. The big dogs in Sparta settled right there. The Athenians were right here. Peloponnese is a hot spot, all right? It's where some of the only available farmland in Greece actually exists, all right? So now here's the crazy part about the Mycenaean people. They come in two phases. And so I know right now that one of y'all's brains is about to explode. You're like, wait a minute, there's time periods within time periods? Yes, there are time periods within time periods, all right? Definitely time periods within time periods, simply because it's easier to understand and to break them down, and it makes a lot more sense. Because these people showed up as a nomadic group of you know what I mean? Like a nomadic group of hunter-gatherers trying to find somewhere to live. Their time periods within their time period show how they developed intelligence-wise at a great phase, at a great leap, right? So, because ironically enough, 1600 to about 1100 BC, that's only give or take maybe 300 years of dominance, even though ironically enough, America's only been really dominant for less than 100 years. All right, so I guess we should start freaking out. Now, anyway, but two phases of the Mycenaean people. The first one, okay, so just so you know, this should not be in parentheses. This should be in parentheses. And do not mute me, and do not skip over this, because this is super dummy important. All right, so their history comes in two very distinct, very separate phases, all right? So, and it actually shows a great leap in technology and as well as intelligence. Here we go. All right, so the big first one is known as the shaft grave era, right? So now what that means is very simple. So whenever you're digging a mine, right, it's a mine shaft, right? It goes down into the earth, right? So the way their shaft graves work is they would just dig a very, very, very long hole, or not even really a tunnel, all right? So And then down here at the very, very bottom, there'd be a small room, right? And in this room, they would bury important figures with their little items or idols or their little prized possessions, any kind of gold that they had, their wealth, right? So important people went right here, and then they would just bury this whole thing back up. And so here's the top of it, right? So famous figures like this guy right here in the gold mask, that's King Agamemnon, right? So an actual king of the Mycenaean people, but also a figure of Greek myth whenever you're talking about the Iliad with Homer, which we'll talk about later. And then as you can see, this is one of the grave sites right here. That's one of the shaft graves right there. That's just the top of it, right? And also here's some items that we actually believe were found inside of some of those shaft graves. These are boar's tusks helmet, right? Boar tusk helmets and some simple bronze swords. Now some of you are immediately like, whoa, wait a minute, helmets? Swords? The Minoans were all about art and bulls and sport and stuff like that. The Mycenaeans seem like they might be a little bit more about war. Good flippin' job, Angelica. That is exactly right. They are more about war. They're more of a warrioristic type of culture, right? So, because they would actually make these helmets and have these like different types of weapons. Then they're going to get into the coin era, all right? Sometimes mispronounced as quinine. Now, anyway, but that's a medicine. All right, so, or what I like to call it, and what makes more sense, is their beehive burial phase, right? So they did have some cultural, like, leaps, right? Agamemnon right here, we'll talk about him later, but that is his death mask, right, made out of pure gold. But then they moved into the beehive burial, right? Yeah, it's a bee. All right, anyway, now, so check this out. You have probably seen a beehive burial looking crypt before. So in New Orleans, at the corner of Canal and I want to say like Orleans Avenue, there is a big cemetery, right? And in one of these cemeteries on the corner right next to the streetcar depot is a huge green hill with a door on it, and on top of it is a statue of a deer, right? So, or stag. That actually is very symptomatic of the beehive burial system, right? Because in the beehive burial system, they started making burials that looked like this. So there would be a huge hill, right, of natural territory. And then they would actually cut into this hill, right, with a tunnel, and then build the tomb inside the hill itself, and then put the certain figures or the famous people right here, right? They would be dead and stuff. And this way, you could walk in and out and visit this tomb anytime you want. Then they would have like sacrifices right here that are actually going to be sacrifices to important people, a king's body that's going to be surrounded by treasure, a doorway that's going to be super decorative and stuff like that, covered in like different gold rosettas, and like priests and would bring food offerings and stuff. So obviously, if you're looking at these two phases, this shows a growth in intelligence, right? A very, very giant leap in intelligence, right? That's why we need to know and understand these people. Because early on, they worked with the Minoans because they were kind of a simpler people. They were a simpler people, right? A nomadic people, a roaming people. So then they started becoming much more intelligent. They started making full bronze suits of armor. They started creating frescoes, just like the Minoans did, right? And then they also even made, I want one of these pot replicas so bad. And if y'all in one of your art classes ever do pottery, but that is my favorite Greek piece of pottery because it actually predates red and black figure pottery, but it is technically a black figure piece of pottery. But it's like, oh, look at the octopus. I don't know why, but I'm obsessed with octopi. I think they're so cool. Did you know, actually, fun fact, that they think that octopi could be potentially just as intelligent as humans if they just had a longer lifespan because they only live for like 4 years, but they can problem solve, they can do all kinds of other crazy stuff. Just saying. All right, so anyway, now, but Mycenaeans, though, they're going to live in peace with the Minoans for a while. But then all of a sudden, around 1500, many historians believe there is a good to solid chance that the Mycenaeans attacked, destroyed, and took over the Minoans. Now, there's a lot of historic debate about this. There's a ton. Several different historians have a theory that, geographic evidence shows that there was some type of natural disaster that occurred on Crete during this time period. Possibly an earthquake, possibly a volcano. We don't really know, right? So, and then a lot of other historians are like, well, the Mycenaeans are a warrioristic kind of people, and they eventually began like a large empire that covered the entire like Greek peninsula. So isn't there a good chance that they just took them over? All right, so there's a lot of debate about this. Now, I personally think it's probably more likely a combination of the two because I am not a black and white historian. I think there's a good chance a lot of stuff happened, and also it's okay to live in that little bit of ambiguity, right? But as you can tell, all this pink, That's the Mycenaeans, right? The Mycenaeans grew after the Minoans died out, right? So the Minoans are going to kind of die out, and then the Mycenaeans are going to start flourishing, and they're going to start creating all these new places. And all these teeny tiny little dots within them are Mycenaean settlements, right? And all of these other little squares, they're other places that the Mycenaeans took over when they were like fledgling, right? So like little baby Athens was taken over by the Mycenaeans when the Mycenaeans were growing, right? So little Pylos taken over by the Mycenaeans as they were growing, right? The earliest form of the Spartans might have been taken over by the Mycenaeans, even though ironically enough, everybody that like knows that the Dorians settled the Spartans, probably not, but still. All right, so anyway, so they were growing. So you can tell that they're a pretty big not to be messed with group, right? They're pretty large. Also, they eventually even created their own writing system, known as Linear B, right? Derived from Linear A. But this can be translated a little bit, all right? That is a very confusing sentence. Don't say also can be translated. Just right underneath Linear A, like Linear B, we understand some of it, all right? Because it's got a mixture of modern-day Greek inside of it as well, and uses some of the phonetic elements that actually the Phoenicians probably gave by trading with them, right? So it's the foundation of modern Greek. So, and as you can see, it's a lot easier to read. It's a lot less cluttered, right? So, and at their height, the Mycenaeans even built a huge, humongous stronghold, right? A gigantic city surrounded by a wall trying to protect themselves. Some of you would say it's very Assyrian-like, right? Very, very structurally like, So their stronghold, though, was called Mycenaea. So maybe they're not that artistic or creative when it comes to naming things, but they're still very, very strong. The only way in and out of it is known as the Lion's Gate, right? Now, ironically enough, the Lion's Gate is also a name that's used for a film production company that actually one of their biggest films is known as the Hunger Games series. And the Hunger Games series directly takes its influence of their storylines from a Greek myth that involves the Mycenaeans. So don't tell me that history is not in your face on a regular, everyday basis. Lion's Gate films, look it up. All right, now, anyway, but that is the Lion's Gate right there, actually. This is the only way in or out, right? Like if I was a stronghold, I would want it like this too, because this is super protective, right? You've got walls on both sides as people are trying to enter in. You post up archers on the top. You can just light people up when they're trying to invade your city-state, right? And that right there is the Lion's Gate, because you can see there's a simple pillar or a column, and there are two lions paying like basically tribute to it, right? It's a very simple Minoan column, actually, because you can tell it's inverted, right? So this is what we believe the Mycenaean stronghold come back. We think it looked like, there we go, at the growth of their civilization. This right here, that's one of those original shaft grave burial grounds, right? And as the city expanded, it went up the hill and started to like develop, and you can see that there's some definite architectural influence from the Minoans, no question, right? Now, really, really quick though, too, something else that's very, very important. As you can see, the Mycenaeans, they're overlapping with someone. Look down here, New Kingdom Egypt, right? Like, so, that's right. All right, so the Mesopotamians, the Egyptians, they're back again. So the Assyrians, they're over here in their infancy. All right, so doing all this other stuff, right? The Mycenaeans are the Western group that we did not talk about in the first unit because they make more sense to talk about by themselves, right? So you've got all these empires over here that we've already talked about, right? The Hittites, who will eventually take over New Kingdom Egypt and bring ironworking to them, right? So you've got a lot of different people. You've got the kingdom of Babylon right before it gets taken over by the Assyrians, right? You've got all these different phases of empires going on. The Kassites, the Mitannis, like you've got all, like we didn't talk about them because they're not that influential. But like, look at it. Look. All right, now, anyway, so you've got all these people on their growth, right? Now, if you've got a lot of people growing, chances are there's going to be some conflicts, all right? So, which there was, all right? There was a heavy amount of conflict between these people, right? So, the one big thing that we do know, speaking of all these empires coexisting together at once, we are pretty confident that this is going to create some war, some cultural diffusion. Yeah, that's right. I said it again. All right, so the big thing about this war and this like different like epic cycle is one major historic event did happen. This is called the Trojan War, right, or a war with Troy. Now, we'll talk about the myth, all right, itself. Ask me about the myth in class. Be like, remind Mr. Terry to tell the Iliad stuff. Now, the Trojan War, we believe, is a huge, groundbreaking event that actually set up a lot of different historical elements to the ancient Greeks, period. It is a landmark event, right? So, star next to Trojan War epic cycle, right? That's why I got it right there. We believe in real life, that there was a feud between the Mycenaeans and the Hittites, right? Simply because the Hittites controlled this area of the Mediterranean trade, and then the Mycenaeans wanted to break into this area of Mediterranean trade, right? Trade with the Egyptians, trade with several other people, trade with some of the early Israelites, trade with some of the early Phoenicians, right? Whereas the Hittites were trying to, like, basically disempower them. Now, more than likely, though, this, we believe, was the Mycenaeans and a coalition of Greek states attacked the small city-state of Troy, which is up here by itself, which was used as a major gateway into the Hittite Empire, right? So mainly because we believe that the Troy was probably aligned with the Hittites, and the Mycenaeans were not having that. So they attacked and destroyed the city of Troy. Now, unfortunately, the only story we have about, like, Troy is made up by a blind guy, all right? So anyway, that, of course, the thing you know of mostly from the, like, Trojan War is the Trojan horse and Homer's Trojan War epic cycle, right? So you have to understand the Trojan War and the story told by Homer sets up not only two of the landmark marquee stories, both written in red for the Greeks, Iliad, involves Achilles, right, that very, very famous figure, and then the Odyssey, which involves the famous figure of Odysseus, right? So these two stories directly relate to this one event in the Mycenaean Empire. So it is a very important event, the Trojan War itself. And then also, this is written in green over here, it was such a landmark marquee event that later on a Roman poet, Virgil, actually wrote a story called the Aeneid saying that Rome was founded by displaced Trojans, right? So, like, because apparently that was like the fad at the time, was like, oh, we're related to the Trojans, right? We were so taken advantage of. So anyway, but yeah, so the Trojan War is a major, major marquee event. You need this, all right? Go ahead and draw that in your notes. It is very, very important, all right? Now, you can do a list or something if you want. Now, I only got a little bit more left. Now, the Bronze Age collapse is going to show up. Do not write all of this. You are nuts if you write all of that, all right? So, but this is the last slide, okay? Then something crazy happens. You need to go to your Greek time periods, and you need to draw something. So we got Neolithic, Early Bronze, Minoans, Mycenaeans, Dark Ages, Archaic, Classical, Hellenistic. We are now halfway. We are now halfway. You need to do this when you, like, do this, though. Because at that dotted line is what's known as the Bronze Age collapse, the BAC, the back, all right? So when the Bronze Age collapse occurred, we don't really know for sure what happened. Another very, very big disparaging thing, right? So, but we do know that it kind of summed up the use of bronze as a major metal by all of these different empires, right? So the end of the Bronze Age. No, we're not positive what happened, but all the big empires, the Hittites, the Egyptians, the Mycenaeans, they all saw widespread destruction. There's a lot of different theories, right? We believe that the Mycenaeans, their collapse also kind of directly, like, entails with the invasion of these people known as the Dorians, right? So the Dorians as in, like, Hurricane Dorian, right? The Dorians make everyone sad, so Dorians, right? Just underline Dorians right there, which was an invading group of barbarians, right? Which they called themselves Hellenes, or of Helen, right? And translates later into the word known as Greek, right? So the big things with this, all right, is that you got to understand that we don't really know what happened, but bronze started being used little to none, and then begins the Iron Age, right? The age of iron weapons and iron shields and iron spears and things like that, right? The Bronze Age collapse is a very important event, and it kind of completely changes the game for the Greeks, all right? So, but that is where we're going to stop for this flip tonight. I know it was a lot of stuff, but it's a lot of stuff I like to talk about, so sorry about it. Sorry, I'm not sorry. All right, so anyway, now, but I'll talk to you guys later. Have a good evening. See y'all later on. Bye.